Welcome to Popcorn Talk, featuring movie discussion, news, and interviews. Popcorn Talk. We talk movies.
Hey, you guys, welcome to today's show. It's so good to be back talking with you. I've missed Lorian, I've missed Jeff, everybody. Here we are, all back together. The past few weeks, we've taken the time off to do our own personal work around the Black Lives Matter movement, with the first and last step being listening. We've also been reading, protesting, and giving financially. It's a really big, essential topic. We plan to continue the work and to find ways to help make real change, specifically in our industry, such as a possible mentor program that I'm going to try to put together. And I want to thank my friend Willie Hagan, who has been helping me put that together. I can't talk more about it right now because we're still doing it, still trying to get it together. But as soon as we do that, I will, of course, talk to you guys about it here and make it available to you guys. So, also, of course, any questions, ideas, or ways we can help on your journey, especially people of color, please remember to reach out to us on Facebook and our Gmail address. If we don't have the answer, we will find it.
Yes. Yeah. I really missed everyone and what Meg said, and it's really great to be back. And today we're going to be talking about outlining or chunking, which we've discussed but not covered in length. So we're really excited about that.
Yeah. So we had some questions. People came in and asked us to talk more about that. So, we're here to answer your questions. So we will. But before our topic, we're going to talk about our week, or what we like to call adventures in screenwriting. Lori,
Yes.
It's been a couple of weeks.
Yeah. I've been struggling with insomnia. That's like, so that, which is new. And so I don't like it at all. What's that?
A lot of people with the stress of the coronavirus.
And I'm not a fan. So I'd like to pass on this, but it doesn't seem to be listening. And so it's really, it's exaggerating all of my other sort of issues that come up around like anxiety or fear of failure or all that stuff. So it's really hard to sort of wrangle any sort of considered writing, or like all of my like second guessing and self-doubt, like all that stuff now feels like I'm like, there's like 6 feet tall demons hanging around with me all night and all day. So last night I actually got some sleep.
Yay.
So I feel great. Okay, I feel okay. I don't feel great. But this week I have been really, really busy, and it's hard to know if that busy feeling and that exhausted feeling is from like the work I've been doing or from like not sleeping. I'm doing what I'm doing. This week I had a producer meeting. I'm doing some script editor work for a couple projects for Screen Australia, which I love working with those writers and directors in that organization. And I had a general meeting yesterday, which was really great. It's always so much. It's for me, being in lockdown and not being around other people is really awful. I really hate it.
Person.
I'm a people person, and Zoom is good, I guess, but I'd rather talk on the phone, honestly, so I can like walk or be doing something. But I had a really good meeting yesterday with somebody, and it was a really fun conversation. And I think we're going to work on something together. So that felt, that's what I miss with talking to people, is people getting excited about me and me getting excited about them and having that energy exchange. So maybe that's why I finally slept. I got some external validation.
Hey, it's good to know yourself. It's good to know yourself and what you need.
Yeah, but this is awful. Like, this is really awful. And not in like a boo-hoo, poor me, but just acknowledging that this is part of being a writer right now, being a part of I'm an extrovert. I took one of those tests once and I'm like off the charts extrovert. So surprise to everyone. And I'm writing and trying not to beat myself up about every word I put down, because I'll do this thing where I'll write a couple pages and then be like, terrible, throw it away. And then instead of pushing through and, why do I think it's terrible? It doesn't matter that it's terrible. Keep going. Like all the brilliant advice that Meg gives us on this podcast, I'm like, suddenly I can't hear it. I'm like, nope, my demons are louder than anything I've ever said or Meg's ever said. So it's a piece of this. And the other piece too is I think this is an important topic we should talk about at some point, which is writing at home during lockdown with our kids and our families here. Like how many of us have had, our kid come into the frame at like the worst possible moment during a pitch or during a meeting, and it's real, right? And I think we have to address that, and that all those things that I feel so worried about, school and homeschooling and all that, like it's a big deal to have to worry about this. We have single parent writers in the industry. We have, both like a writing team and they have kids. And so this is a big thing on my mind too. Like, how am I going to manage, in the fall if we don't go back to school or it's part-time school or, that's a
That is the difference between you and me, because I just choose to not think about that and ignore it completely. Because
oh,
it will overwhelm me if I think about the fall. My brain will fry and I will not be able to write. So I'm completely ignoring it.
so I chose the first one, right? If there's a bone for me to worry on it, I'm gonna be like, chew on that bone, right? Like if there's an opportunity for me to grab on something. So I have chosen to distract myself from my actual work by cycling out about school and test
Well, the other
numbers
thing
and
that
all that.
I've been able to worry about, which I want to say just in case real quick, is spectrum in my area is dropping. Like it literally is just dropping. And I was on a academy Zoom for their mentees, like 100 people watching, and it dropped 3 times. So we might have that happen today. I lose about 5 pounds with adrenaline, so it's great for me. But
It's a good weight loss plan, Meg.
just to let
No.
you know that that might happen. Um,
How was your week or
okay,
weeks?
my weeks, I'm working on both moving from an outline to a script as well as kind of originating 2 different projects. So on the moving from outline to script, I always like to tell you stuff that I'm discovering as I do my work. So I realized, oh, right. So in the outline, this scene is literally like a paragraph, maybe. But when you actually go to write it, there's like 12 things happening in here, and all of these plot things are landing, and character relationships are hitting, and it's just way too much. And you don't even know that until you get in there. And, it can be a bit of a panic, like, oh my God.
Oh.
Uh-oh. Did
So
we lose Meg,
concerned.
or did
I think
I
we
couldn't
did.
tell if we
No,
lost
I think
Meg.
it's her. You know what? There she
Oh,
is.
she's back.
Am
She's
I
back.
here? Oh no. I'm sorry, you
She's
guys.
back.
This is gonna
No,
I
you're
happen.
just want
fine.
you to know, Meg, that you froze in a really
I
attractive
did. It was
pose.
pretty. Was it pretty?
Yes. Yeah, it was
Um,
good.
so I'm going through the experience of outline to script and what doesn't work, what works in outline and what doesn't. And you change one thing in the front and suddenly the back, you realize we have to change all of this. So my advice is just to keep going and keep working it as you're in the script and just go over and over and over it. And just, it is that slog through of push through, get to the end, go back, go back. And I had one day where I have so much going on, and yet I wrote for 4 hours on this spec, and I had to throw it all away. And I really felt so angry and frustrated because I was like, I don't have that 4 hours to waste and throw it away. But I had to throw it away because it didn't work. This thing we tried didn't work, but that is part of the writing process. And now I did learn things from doing it, but it's equally frustrating for me. And I guess what I wanted to talk about is dealing with disappointment. Like I'd worked for 4 hours and it doesn't work. Just how much disappointment is part of the process of any creation, but especially writing. um, Maybe it's the disappointment of the notes you got back, or pitching on Zoom. And people, Zoom is so bad because people literally on Zoom are like this, like they're looking like, what? And you're like, I can see you while I'm pitching, can you at least smile and like pretend to be interested? But like literally the disappointment's hitting as you're pitching, that they're not getting it. um oh my God, you so get it and they don't get it. Or maybe you're just read over your pages and you're disappointed in them because you thought they were great, but they're actually maybe not, or you're not sure. So my advice in disappointment and however it comes up, is just get to the next stone in the path. Just get to the next good spot. It does wonders. Like I was so kind of in a bad spot and feeling horrible, and like I was a horrible writer and I was a total loser. And I just kept writing. I literally just kept pushing through, and it really felt like I was going through the motions. And a lot of people think about writing as inspiration and, it's like this magical flow. And yeah, that happens sometimes. But honestly, a lot of times it's literally just, I'm pretending to be a writer right now because I don't know how to make this work. And I don't even like you people that I'm writing about anymore because you're bugging me because you will not make any sense. And I'm not connected to these characters. And oh my God. And I just keep writing and I just keep writing the scenes. And then I had this amazing thing happen where all of a sudden it started to click and entered that flow. I did. And it wasn't like, oh, within 20 minutes. I'm talking like all day. And then all of a sudden I entered the flow and I wrote a really good scene. And I knew it was a good scene as I was writing it. And all of a sudden I was like, I like these people and I like them together and I like what's happening. I would have never gotten there if I hadn't just kept going stone to stone, go to the next scene, go to the next one. This sucks. Okay, I don't know. I don't know. This actually makes no sense because I wasn't connected yet. But the only way I can see that really you're going to get connected is by writing the scene. Sometimes writing outlines or talking about it helps you, but honestly not really because it's a different part of your brain, right? They have to walk around, they got to talk. So, I personally realized as a writer, I connect to relationship.
Mm.
I connect to the characters relating to each other, and that's how I find them. So if I'm always just talking about who the character is, or I'm always an outline, I never get to do that. I never
Mm.
get to have them talk to each other and interact and surprise me, which is the best part of writing when you're like, I have no idea why she's getting off the horse. Where is she going? Oh my God, she's pulling out her sword. What is going to happen? Like, that's the best, right? But it's not like I do that all day long. I literally get moments of it, I get pieces of it. And that's why I'm a writer, just to get there, right? But I just want to say to everybody, it's hours and hours and hours and days of work sometimes of just going through the motions to get there. Like, that is writing. Like, we all have some idea in our head that, these writers like Hemingway just sat down and wrote and were these geniuses. I'm sorry, I just don't believe it.
Mhm.
I think it's a lot of blood, sweat, and sucky stuff, man. Like, it's just try to, that's what the chunk it out. Just try to get back into curiosity. Try to get back into finding the slimmest net thread of connection because they said something that was interesting to you, or all of a sudden, and that, I get it. The demons are telling you, stop, this doesn't work. But I'm telling you and telling your demons, you have to go forward in order to get there. And you have to go forward. Stopping, I don't believe most of the time will actually get you there. And it's really hard because it feels super like you can't breathe sometimes because it's just like some part of your brain knows it doesn't work. So that, I
Yeah,
really had this great experience of having that
that's
happen. I
great.
will tell you, the next day after that great scene, I wrote another really bad scene. So it, it's not like it just comes, you turn on the tap and now it's on until you want to turn it off.
Right.
Stuff happens.
I
So
think that's what we talk about discipline. Like, that's what we're talking about, is that it's not just putting in the time, it's really committing to do it, because it feels like when I get to that place where I'm like, I get to that stone, I can't even see the next stone in the path ahead,
right.
right? And it feels like the abyss, and it feels like the demons and the abyss of trying to jump to that next stone is confronting my identity as a writer, as a
Mm,
creative person. So I feel like, oh, if I just stay on this stone to wallow in this, right, and not even jump, then I can still kind of pretend I'm a writer, right? But it's the jumping, but it's the confronting that, and trying to put all of that aside is really, really hard. So it it's like staying in the seat, staying in the scene, writing, typing, like not falling off the chair and bursting into tears, which I have done.
write the bad
Um,
scene. Write the scene as
yes,
bad as you can. Choose a
it's
rock. I swear to God, you know who knows the next stone? Your character.
Mhm.
yeah,
The character knows it, but that you have to write in order for them to tell you. And you know what? Maybe it's going to be a rock that you freaking hate. It's full of moss, it stinks, and it's underwater. But okay, it's a rock, and it's going to get you to the next rock and the next rock. And eventually you might get to a place that you realize, I don't even need any of those rocks. But I
mhm,
never would have gotten to this little island if I hadn't gone on all those shitty rocks.
Mhm.
So yes, it is sometimes like leaping into the unknown and uncertain because you don't know that there's a rock under your foot. but I'm telling you, there is a rock under there, and you have to keep going, because standing on your rock that you're certain of is not going to get you anywhere. It's not
Mm.
writing. You can't get to that island over there
Mhm.
by wishing it, right? It's literally a slog through that swamp, and I'm out of metaphors for rocks and water. But because
And
I'm
then it's
such a good
dry,
writer.
and then it's a canyon.
But you know,
Yeah,
I
but
just wanted to talk about that. And the other little quick thing was, you know, we got a question that is something I'm going through from Christine in LA about the rewriting process. And, um, uh, you know, you can be rewriting because you get notes, or you can be rewriting because you read it, or you and your partner read it. There's lots of ways to be rewriting. And for me, as a feature, I always, we've talked about this in terms of a question of how do I do it, is I always organize the notes towards what's the biggest note, what's the bottom note, right? Is it about the tone? Is it that you actually are writing a different movie than the note, then you're not communicating the tone of the movie and what kind of movie it is, you know? um is it about the relationship? Is it probably about your main character and their want and their drive and making them vulnerable, and your plot's not making them vulnerable? You have to go to the big one first and really work that one out. And I work that one out, and then I see where the other ones fit, and then I go back and I card again. Now,
Mm.
I'm writing a TV spec, so I can't do that necessarily, because you're going through a process with executives where they've read an outline and now you're supposed to write it. But I still am doing that deep work with Jonathan in terms of really going down in and looking and saying, well, where is this? This character just seems super flat, and that's because this relationship is flat, and that's because the plot is not forcing them
Stop
into
the video.
exposing each other. So, you know, my advice about rewriting is always go back to the biggest problem and recard it back out, even no matter what you do. And you know, realize it's all, for me, rewriting is all about going back to the vulnerability of the character, always going back to that. What makes me feel anything? What am I emotionally
Mhm.
connecting to?
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
that was my
It
time.
was a big week.
It was a big week. It was a big
Yeah.
week.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and
The
hop
other
in. Oh, sorry, Lorian, go ahead.
I was just gonna say the other thing I'm doing this week is waiting. I
Yeah.
have some projects out there that I'm waiting for feedback on, right? Like and one could go and one could not go, or one could, and that's also, I think, adding, because it's hard for me to do that thing where, like, oh, it's out there, I'm gonna forget it, right? Moving on, because I know I'm waiting, right? And it could be a great big fat yes and yay, or it could be like, you stink, which I know isn't really the answer, but it's,
That's pretty black
how
and
I
white.
feel. I am a black and white thinker. I'm working on it because, one of my projects I've been working on for a couple of years now, and it keeps kind of resurrecting. So it's like, oh, it's dead. I have to let it go. I bury it. I have a funeral. And now, oh, it's back. So that's one of them. So
It's
it's
emotional. When
either yay or yeah.
I give my script out and I realize I'm being really mean to my children because I'm so nervous about people giving me notes. It's so bad. So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
waiting,
Yeah. Anyway. So
waiting
yeah,
sucks. Waiting sucks.
waiting sucks. All right, Jeff, I'm sorry. You were going to say something.
No, it's no
Yeah.
problem. I wanted
Oh.
to make sure we were going to shout out some of our listeners with some amazing reviews. Of course, this is Megan Lorian's favorite part of the show where I read.
Oh no, remember, this is my favorite part. I have
Yes.
chosen to love this.
Absolutely. And before I read these reviews, I want to make one quick book recommendation. It had been mentioned in our Facebook group. So if you're not in the Facebook group, make sure you hop in. But it's a book by Elizabeth Gilbert called Big Magic. I don't know if many of our listeners have much experience with Elizabeth Gilbert, but she's this amazing thought leader in creativity. And when you guys were talking about just needing to show up and find those stones, she has this TED Talk. It's about 18 minutes called Your Elusive Creative Genius. And what it's about is the fact that nowadays we usually say that people are geniuses. We'll be like, Aaron Sorkin is a genius. But the word genius actually in historic times was something that came to you. So it's more this idea of a spiritual force, and anyone could have genius at any point, but genius may choose to leave you that day. So what Elizabeth Gilbert says is like, you have to show up. Genius may not show up with you that day, but it might. And if you don't show up, but genius does, it's a missed opportunity. So it's this really amazing, very freeing look at the way we look at genius and creativity. And I'm going to recommend it and put it in the show notes.
That's great.
Okay, I'm going to start with, let's see, C. Stroman 1, who says, the musings of two muses on the life of screenwriting. Beyond the mechanics and business of screenwriting, Meg LaFauve and Lorian McKenna provide their excellent insights into the day-to-day and week-to-week life of being a screenwriter. Best of all, it's provided from a much-needed woman's perspective, which is a breath of fresh air to these ears. Very true. Swaggy E. The Lotus says, this is my new favorite podcast. This podcast offers the best of both worlds when it comes to screenwriting wisdom, practical advice of the intellectual sophistication and sage emotional insight into the heart and soul of why writers write. I learn and grow so much with each episode. Thanks, Meg and Lorian. I'll read one more quickie. This comes from Wally Casting, who says, I'm a big fan. This is the best screenwriting podcast I've listened to. So insightful and educational on the business and craft of screenwriting. What really works is the co-host's chemistry.
Yeah. Oh,
so very nice.
Thank you. God, these reviews are so well written.
They are. I know. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, should we go on to our topic?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
We've gotten a couple requests for this, but the most recent, we got an email from Karen. She's an Emmy-nominated screenwriter, and she said, I've heard Meg mention chunking out her script a few times, and I'd love to hear Meg unpack this concept. How does she go back and forth between cards and the chunked out outline? How does writing pages change the outline for her? Do useful surprises come more often during outlining or while writing script pages? How refined does the outline get? How does Meg's process compare to Lorian's? Outlining is such an essential topic that gets touched on, but I'd love to hear it explored in more depth.
All right.
That is how we were inspired. Yeah.
My chunking or puke draft, or we can name it anything, right? So I'm just going to answer the questions as they are. Okay. How do I go about between cards and chunking and an outline? What I do, and I do different things, honestly, for different projects. Like I was doing one that was based on historical fact, and that needed tons and tons of cards, right? Because that's just a lot of research. So there's a lot of research. I do much more outlining and cards versus maybe something that's purely fictional. So what I do is I always start with kind of a very large 30,000 foot couple of steps I outline for myself, and I might do it on a whiteboard. I find whiteboards for myself are the best, which is where I literally am just saying who's the main character, what do they want, why do I care about them emotionally, how am I going to meet them, how am I attaching to them, what's their vulnerability. I know my basic things that I need for a character, and then I say, what is their inciting incident, what's their end of act one, some sort of midpoint. It could be something like this. Midpoints can be really, really tricky. What's the main relationship that's moving through this? Really important for me is what's their end of act two, because that is the theme of the movie and why I care about it. So to me, I really spend a lot of time on where they're starting, what they want, what is their secrets, and all that great character stuff. But then I really go and I look at, okay, what's the end of act two? What are they realizing about themselves? And then I kind of have an idea of, if I don't know what the action of the climax is, I know what I want their character to be doing. So when I say like an outline, I mean, literally I'm tracking the biggest movements of the character and the main relationship. And then I might do my puke draft from there, honestly, because that's a container, right? It's a little roadmap, but it's not so done that I get worried if I'm going off of it, right? So it's kind of like, here's a version. She's going to start here and she's going to end here. I think this is the main relationship that's going to help crack her open. This is the kind of conflict that she's facing. And this is really the kind of emotional end of act two I want to get her to, even if it's a kind of a little bit broad even. I don't know how I'm going to get her there. I don't know who's with her, but I know emotionally what I want to feel. And then I do a puke draft and I just write and write and write and write. And from there, after that puke draft, I might go to cards, right? Because now I've I allow it to come up. I allow the writing and the creativity and the genius. Let's just say the muse of the genius to come or not. It doesn't matter because it's just clay. Nobody's going to see it. It doesn't have to be good or bad. There's no judgment about it because it's literally like a dream. It's just a dream I had. And so I have fun and I try to really make sure it's fun. And if it goes off and I don't know what act two is, I might stop and say, wait, where am I going? Or I might just keep going. But the trick is to get to the end because the end tells you the beginning. So now I've got a lump of clay and now I might card, right? And then from carding, I might go to like a treatment, but generally I would do that mostly for executives. I don't generally do a treatment. I generally do cards and then I go to a quote unquote real draft. At which point, by the way, it all could go off again. But so when I say chunking, I kind of mean that that puke draft, that draft where you kind of have the basic uh polls, the basic stops along the character's journey, but I'm just chunking out what's coming in between to get there. Does that make sense? Like, okay, it could be this, it could be that, and then she's going to go to the gas station and she's going to meet him at the gas station. But I'm literally writing the scene. I'm not writing an outline. I'm literally letting her walk in, letting her meet him because he might say something right now that surprises me about his character and starts to change this, and then her response might change. You know what I mean? Like I want that chunking out to be an active, alive thing. It needs to be alive. Like it needs to have energy to it. So now it's different in animation where you do a lot more carding because it's much more of a
Yeah.
collaborative, more like TV experience where you're around a table and people are throwing out ideas and you're putting cards on a wall. And you're usually working with a director. So you have, but really, if you think about it, that's really the chunking out that I'm talking about, but with other people, right?
Right.
Where
Right.
their muses throwing out, well, she could go here. I don't really get that, or could be this. And, then you're kind of chunking out in cards and putting it up as cards. I tend to get very detailed on those cards, whereas the director I'm working with right now, he's really good at keeping it very kind of top in terms of like 5 words on the card. So it just depends on who you are and how you're going to do that.
Mhm.
So, and how does writing pages change the outline for her? I mean, it's kind of a symbiotic. They're the same.
Oh,
Uh-oh.
she froze.
Spectrum.
I mean, yeah, it's a thing. But I know what she's talking about, which is that, the last oh, you're back.
My back.
You're back. Okay. So you ended like this with your hands clasped together. You were saying it's
I'm
a
saying
symbiotic
it's a
thing.
symbiotic, yeah, between outlining and writing and that chunking script. You have to. The outline is only there to help your brain get to the script. The thing you're trying to get to is the script. And if you need little signposts to help you get there or an outline, then do it. And if you don't, right? Like, don't think you have to outline. You don't. I tend to like to.
Oh, there she went again. I mean, I think the big part of this is it's great to know other people's processes and to understand what Meg is talking about. But really, like every project has its own life, and every writer has their own process that works. And sometimes it's hard to really define what that process is. Like to say, this is what I do. Some writers are really able to do that, and I don't, right? Like I wouldn't be able to sit down and tell you like, here's my philosophy about it. It's sort of each project becomes its own thing. Right now I'm writing something original and I just realized I have to stop intellectualizing my process. Like I'm going to do cards, I'm going to do this. I'm just going to sit down and start writing.
Yeah.
Right? And it's a thing like in a parking lot, right? I'm not going to write the scene description. I'm just going to write she's in the parking lot, and then if I feel inspired to write the scene, I will, and keep moving because this is a high concept idea I have, but I don't know a lot about it. I've been trying to approach it from a very high level, but I haven't gotten into my main character enough.
Yeah.
So I'm just now going to put her in the world and see what she does. And it'll be sort of a scriptment, I hope, which will be like describing where I want those sort of chunks to be and where I hope she's going to go, but letting her lead, because me trying to tell her who she is and what she needs to get done is not working. Like she's not cooperating at all.
I think that's important because like we chose screenwriting because we love the craft. We love dialogue. We love letting characters in a room to talk to each other. So I think like because we chose that craft, our instinct is to get in there and write that. So I think like the scriptman approach is valuable because those pivotal scenes that you probably have already cooked in your head, you can actually get in there and start writing them.
Right. And they might not be as sexy and amazing as I think they are when I get them on the page, but they might lead me somewhere else, which will be where I need to go. So I think I can get caught in that trap of intellectualizing what I'm writing or my process or how it's supposed to go. But, as Meg tells me, just sit down and write it, right? Like, stop beating yourself up about, all these other things. I will say I really like adaptation. I really like working with IP because I like working in partnership with other writers. And so working on a book feels like I'm working in partnership with the author of the book. And so the last adaptation I did, I made a book, right? It had like a theme tab and and I pulled out all the pages that were that. And that really helped me organize everything so that when I sat down to write my 70-page outline of a feature, became this massive scriptment. But because I'd done all that work ahead of time, sort of breaking the book down and understanding what the theme was and the things that I could let go of and the things that I needed to hold on to, is that sort of chunking piece. Like in this massive book, what was the movie version of it going to be? So it's that sort of outlining, chunking piece. And I had a great time with that. But yeah, I got the outline quote was 70 pages long because it was scenes, it was ideas, but I have never felt so amazing as when I finished that scriptment. I was like, I have something written down that now I can write my draft from. So it was just, it's the writing. Meg, are you back?
I am back. I'm on my phone, hoping
Okay.
it works better.
Okay.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say, in terms of Karen's question, I think that in terms of where the surprises come, I think the goal is to have them coming all the time, right? To allow them to come. I sometimes, like when I'm working in animation, I find myself starting to grasp on, like, no, don't change that. We did this. We've got the pathway. Those are the stones. We have the stones. Do not take the stones away. But they're always getting thrown up in the air, and you have to allow it to be malleable, allow it to be fluid, allow the stones to get thrown out, and there's going to be new ones, so that if you get to the end of your outline and in the third act you realize, oh my God, she doesn't want to do this, she's going to do this, and some surprise comes to you, you have to allow that, right? Don't be like, I'm not going to do that because it makes me have to change all this other stuff. You know what? Take a day, change the other stuff, and see if it's worth it. Like, you don't know. You have to allow the interaction and the fluidity of it to be there. And I know it's scary, but that's the best stuff. The best stuff. Here's the crazy thing. Sometimes when I get notes that I really don't like, or I'm just like, oh, that's going to blow everything up. Fuck you, fuck me. Okay. Sometimes the solution to that is the most surprising fun thing. Right? So you have to push sometimes to the surprise, right? Push yourself. At Pixar, the only rule was, is this the best story? That's a really hard question. That's a very high bar. Like, is this the greatest way to express this? Is this the most interesting? Is he unique? Is his dialogue now making him sound differentiate? Am I getting enough out of this dialogue? Whatever that is. So, I don't lock down and make the outline doesn't have to be a should or a have to. It's a tool to get you to the script. And if it's a tool that is now limiting that script, that is now limiting you, that is making you not do it, then forget that tool. I mean, unless you have to because you've been paid to write an outline, and then it is,
right.
Yeah, you're going to get notes on it and you have to do it, and you should revise it a lot and let the surprises come in that form. But I have to be honest, sometimes my brain doesn't want to do it that way. It doesn't want to do it as an observer, like intellectually. It wants to do it because they're walking around and talking and I'm getting to know who they are.
Yeah.
That might mean if I have to write an outline for money, that I have to go write some scenes that nobody will ever see just so I can get in the water, because I don't know. Right, which I guess is, to Lauren, your point, is the scriptment, where you're just allowing yourself into the water every once in a while to write more of a scene and to get that flavor and magic of relationship up into the scriptment. And it's funny, you guys, everything I've been doing in the last couple of years, from large, big action thing pitches to small things, everybody's asking the same question: how can we make this more emotional? How can we make this more emotional? I don't feel the emotion yet. I don't get her fully yet. Like, that's what I'm driving towards in terms of surprise too, is surprises in the relationship, surprises in how their characters are turning and how they're showing me who they are. So the outline is just a tool, really. And this chunking for me gets by the critic, gets by the demon. who's afraid that there's no stone there, because you're like, I'm just chunking this out. It doesn't matter. We're just throwing some stones down here. I don't know. Yep, that's right. You're right. This sucks, but it's a stone. Let's jump on it and see where it goes. Where does it go? Just be curious. I don't know. Just chunk it out. Just chunk it out. And it'll start to tell you, it'll start to solidify around those structure points of your character, right? How the character is moving, and those structure points are where we're emotionally attaching to them in very strong ways. So that's always what I go back to as my number one tool.
So what if you, so I've talked to a couple of writers about this who, you chunk it out, you have an idea of your midpoint and your ending and your theme, and then you start writing and all your chunks fall apart. If, would you suggest keeping your eye on those chunks and continuing to see that path through, and or going the other path that it wants to go? Like, do you explore both versions? Like, how would you manage that?
Great. You know what's interesting? I think, having now worked with a bunch of writers as a mentor, I think it depends on the kind of writer you are. There are writers who, because all of us avoid in different ways, right? And we protect ourselves in different ways. So if you're a writer who avoids by having lots of ideas that you don't finish, then when you get in and you find out your chunks don't work, you absolutely must finish it the way it is chunked out. Because you've got to teach, because it could be an avoidance tactic of your brain. It could be a jump off because you're actually afraid to complete, right? Or there's other writers who they only write they have like one project and they just rewrite it over and over and over and over and over. And it's so precious. That writer, if they get in and the chunking doesn't work, absolutely go with it. Go with whatever just came up. Forget the chunking, go right towards this new thing and develop that muscle of, it's okay, it's fine, chunk it out again, go again. Now, like at Pixar and other places, if it wasn't working, you would just throw it all down on the ground,
right?
Chunk out a whole brand
start over. Yeah.
Start over. I tend to do that because I got trained that way at Pixar, to start over, chunk it out again, go again. Which is really emotionally challenging. But
wouldn't it be great? Wouldn't it be great that as a writer, we aren't constantly confronted by self-knowledge? Like having to evolve as a creative person, being available for the genius.
It is such an evolution of yourself, man. It's unbelievable. So it really depends, right? On terms of your question of if those chunks don't work, really get honest with yourself about who you are and where we all avoid somehow, right? I avoid by being overcommitted. That's how I avoid getting into some of the darker, vulnerable stuff, right? So, but in a way, sometimes I can use that as the thing to slam me into it, because like, I don't have time, just write it, right? And there it comes.
Right.
So it's figuring out who you are, and but generally, in a general way, I would say if the chunking isn't work, re-chunk it.
As you guys are talking, and I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on this, but I like Jon Favreau a lot, and he talks about movies in a really interesting way. He says that like movies are like 4 to 6 amazing pivotal scenes that you'll remember when you leave the theater, surrounded by scenes that are good enough to get you to those big ones. So like, I think to think about a movie that way, it almost helps my brain be like, okay, this is a way to outline. If I can get these incredible pivotal moments, we need to get our characters there in the in-between kind of thing.
What's interesting to me about that, because I think that's great if that helps you, is that's the way a director would think.
Yeah.
Like, of course, a director, and I mean that with great respect, a director needs those 4 or 5 big scenes that he's going to show his stuff as a director. He's going to do character, he's going to do action, he's going to do visuals you've never seen. Like, he wants 4 or 5 scenes, he can do all of those things. So if you're a writer and you hear that, if that's not your process, and that, like that would not be my process, but I hear it and I think, I literally just thought, do I have those 4 or 5 scenes in the spec I just wrote? Because it is going to be handed to a director, and it is it's a big TV show. And I'm like, what would Jon Favreau say are my 4 or 5 scenes? Like, that's great tool to just even put on your stuff too, right?
Yeah. I think that's interesting because we've talked about this before, like that sort of philosophy, or the different books or people who talk about writing process, that it's a great way to look at something once it's written, right? To check, but it's hard to generate from that place.
Yeah.
I think. Well, I wouldn't be able to be like, what are my 4 or 5 amazing scenes, because I don't know yet. I don't really know. I'm always sort of, I get inspired by an idea or a character, and then I sort of have to follow them to figure out, like Meg, what you're talking about. Like, what are they going to do in that pipe, in that, in that parking lot? And they just picked up a pipe. Like, I don't, oh, is this not a comedy? It's a drama, so I sort of am in the discovery process. But I think once you have something, you can look at something like that and say, like, oh, is this hero's journey? Is this Save the Cat? Do I have those 4 or 5 things?
Yeah,
I think.
speaking of that, if you look on the Facebook page, everybody, one of our writers posted a link to Michael Arndt's new video, which I highly recommend. I mean, first of all, if you just want to know what it's like to work at Pixar, just watch this video. It's amazing. Like, there's literally there's a cartoon moment, animated moment of Michael Arndt strangling Andrew Stanton. It's amazing. So, but it's really, really a good tool to think about your project if you have a script, but don't originate from it. Even Michael would tell you he's not giving you this video to originate. He's giving it to you because you've got the lump and something isn't working, or you keep getting these notes or whatever. Go and do what he's saying. Put this down. Can you mark these things that he realized about character? And there, there's great ones about how to keep characters active within scenes, right? So I really highly recommend it. He and I diverge probably as you get towards the end of Act 2 and Act 3, and we have different approaches, right, in terms of what interests us and what we're going for. But that's okay. That's his tool. I'm still going to put his tool down on top of mine. So I totally really agree with Lorian. It's any tool is to put onto the clay. It's not to originate. But really, check. It's on the Facebook page, the link. So check it out, you guys. It's amazing. Yeah. It's amazing. This Michael Arndt video. It's amazing.
I haven't watched it yet, so now I'm excited.
It's brand new. He did one before. This is the brand new one. It just dropped like a week ago.
And I'm going to put it in the podcast description as well as a link to our Facebook group. So when this episode drops, it'll have the Elizabeth Gilbert video, the Michael Arndt video, and a link to join our Facebook group. I would highly encourage you to join the Facebook group. It's incredible.
Yeah, I'm putting stuff up on the Facebook group. Like when I did my talk at the Academy, I mentioned when I taught at UCLA, I realized I was asking the same 20 questions over and over and over. And somebody said, "What are they?" So I was like, "Oh, I should put that on the Facebook group of the podcast too." So I just put that up there. These are the 20 questions that, as a producer, I kept asking these young writers over and over and over to know about their project. So on the Facebook page, we'll be dropping lots of different fun stuff for you to use. Lots of tools for the toolbox. I guess we should do the question real quick, right? Yes?
Yeah.
Can we?
You want to read it?
It's a pretty simple one. Basically, so 2 different people wrote in kind of basically with the same question. Both Maggie and Kate both asked about rights issues. Maggie is adapting a semi-obscure play into a feature film without the rights. And Kate has an amazing feature film idea that involves an iconic Christmas character that's actually that character is owned by another company. And they're both asking questions like, can you send your script out and use the draft? Use what you wrote to obtain the rights? Can you still register with the WGA? I don't know the legality of registering with the WGA. I would say go ahead and do it just because why not? Like nobody's,
do it.
You might as well. But the big takeaway is don't write without rights.
Get the rights. Get the rights.
If you want to say, like, I know Maggie said she just has to because she just feels so drawn to this piece. So if you can, in your heart, and I really mean, think about it, can you in your heart know that it's a writing exercise and that it is about making your craft better? It's about being a better writer. It's about attaching to who you are and finding your voice. Then go ahead. But really, do not think you're going to make money from it. You could maybe even use it as a sample. I think you can, but I will ask my lawyer and post that on Facebook. I don't know if you can use it as a sample. I think you can, but again, I'll ask the lawyer. But really, in terms of your heartbreak, be very, very careful about doing anything without rights. Go get them. I mean, what the heck? Ask.
Yeah. I've had this experience where I didn't know who had the rights to something and it did not turn out well for me. So get the rights. Know who has the rights, get the rights. Always.
And rights are not that expensive. I don't know about the Christmas character. They might be a little more expensive. Maybe not though. Here's the thing that people who have rights respond to: passion. I wanted rights to a book, and I got to the author by going to the publisher who gave me the literary agent, and then she worked to help me get on the phone with the author. And I just passionately told her why I loved her book, what I saw in it, why I thought it would make a great television series, what I would do, who the character was, really just from my heart. And it spoke to her. And so she gave me the rights. And again, rights don't have to be super expensive either. I mean, not in my case, but a lot of times, sometimes they'll give you them they have to be a certain amount of money to be legal. I think it's like $100 or something.
You can do a shopping option, which is like $1 for a certain amount of time, right? Which, depending on how well known the property is, or, but yeah, it's not that complicated.
I don't think an obscure play is going to be that expensive. So Maggie, for sure, for you've got to just do your due diligence and see if you can get those rights and be passionate. And I knew a woman who I taught at UCLA who became so good at getting rights, she flew all over the country getting them. And she didn't do it with a lot of money. It was all about her passion. So, and in terms of a Christmas character, ask. You've got to know, because if the answer is no over our dead body, then you're really deciding what you're writing, and that it is a writing exercise. And I know it's funny, right? It's like standing on that rock and not wanting to jump to the next rock because you're afraid there's no rock there, or that rock's going to turn to you and say, you suck. Like, it's the same thing, right? Of not getting the rights. I have to say, it's the same inclination of not wanting to go find out, because what if the answer is no, and then I can't write it and I have to suffer disappointment? Back to my theme. Yes, there may be disappointment, but at least you're going to know what you're dealing with, right? So that you can make clear-headed decisions.
And I'm guessing,
get the rights.
I'm guessing that the playwright of this obscure play is looking forward to the phone call of being told that their work is beloved. I think it can only lead to something. Sure. And quick story, if you guys are Greta Gerwig fans listening to the show, there's a very pivotal scene in Lady Bird where Cry Me a River plays, the Justin Timberlake song. She wrote Justin Timberlake an impassioned letter and was like, hey, our budget can't really afford this song, but my characters need this. This was such an important song to me growing up. And he gave it to her for very little money. So you never know.
Yeah, you never know. Yeah. And the Christmas character, you know what? You may have a version or a way to re-enliven this Christmas character to bring it back to modern times, or it's a new twist on it. Write that down and register that, because the they might steal it, but probably they won't, because it's all about, they don't know how to write a script. These people probably, right? They need a writer. So go ask so that you know what you're dealing with.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. So thanks, you guys, for tuning into the Screenwriting Life on Popcorn Talk Network. Our plan is we're going to keep doing this. Here we go. We're going to be back every week. Please send us your questions. It really helps us know what topics you need. We're thinking about bringing in a TV writer to answer a lot of the TV questions that are coming in. So send us your TV questions so that when we get this person in, we've got a lot of great stuff to talk to him or her about.
So stay safe and keep writing.
Okay. Bye, guys.
Bye.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, and the entire Popcorn Talk Network, we would like to thank you for tuning in. For questions or comments, be sure to visit popcorntalk.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of the Popcorn Talk Network.